Hello guys, welcome back to another video. You might have heard us rustling around in the background because I don't have to dip dip the audio during that little intro bit. I don't know. Either way, Manchester City have not just 24 hours ago now beat Man United 3-0 at Old Trafford in the first Manchester derby of the season. It was a glorious 2 hours of football to witness. Lovely stuff. And of course, I wanted to chat to some fellow Berts about this because you got to revel in it. You got to enjoy it because what's the point otherwise? As you can see, some fresh faces alongside me. Mulv, of course, representing Noisy Pod. Mulv, hello. How are you doing today?
Hi, Steve. Hi, Amos. Thanks for having me. Buzzing still. I think I might be starting to come down off of it, but I don't want that to, interrupt my performance. So I'm gonna
Well, I'll
stay
drop
quite.
you so, mate.
I'm gonna stay quite giddy through this. I think
there's no rest for the wicked. You can't get complacent. Pep would want us
that's
to.
right.
You want us to revel in the moment at the same time. Looking at the next game, it's a really strange mixture in this world. Of course, as well, Amos representing City Report podcast. Amos, how you doing, my friend, today?
Oh, good. A little bit like Mulv. I'm just sort of. I didn't have much work on today, so I've just been sort of stewing away in the Derby Day delight. It's interesting. I always remind myself. I always have to check it because obviously my history, and I know we spoke about it before, Steve, of Manchester United, obviously growing up in Manchester, it wasn't a pleasant experience. But I always forget that for some people, United isn't the biggest game of the season. So I was chatting to some Americans yesterday and like, oh yeah, 3-0 win against United. I'm like, no, that is the greatest thing of all time. But for me anyway, I've been buzzing, I've been loving it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's been over a decade. I keep forgetting that even the semi-final, the FA Cup semi-final was that was 12 years ago now, whatever, 12, 13 years ago. It's a long time. It's a very long time. There's literally reasonably people who can vote who are adults now, who are like 20 years old and whatever. They've only ever known City. Full-on functioning adults only ever known City being better than Man United, because you don't really know when you're five, So that's why I've been liberal with the age there. But it's a crazy thing. But that is the reality. But for me personally, it remains incredibly sweet because I think we're desperately aware that it could change at any moment. Football is fickle that way, Did this victory still hit for you hard, Mulv? Because obviously things have changed a lot. It's been a while since City were the underdogs here, but does it still feel, do you get something from it?
I'll tell you the difference for me. It's about the nerves going into it. I don't have them anymore. I think largely to do with the fact that I just don't hear from many United fans anymore. I found
For good reason.
I found a Facebook post.
I wonder
why. I found a Facebook post. I don't go on Facebook much anymore, but I did find one from a United fan that was, right around that time you mentioned, right before the FA Cup final, Steve.
Yeah.
That was it's just the typical stuff we used to get back then about about how United were like the pride of Manchester and we were an embarrassment and all that. and it's like now that guy he's not even into football anymore.
What a coincidence,
Yeah.
They always lapsed, aren't the United fans? It's mad, isn't it? So many lapsed United fans. Well, I keep an eye on the scores a little bit. I always hear that. I follow it a little bit, and I've never heard a Man City fan say that ever, for what it's worth. I've genuinely never heard a City fan go, "Oh, I'll keep an eye on it a little bit." I wonder if that's maybe it'll be a case where generations, because of the way that football goes. Like, I follow it when they're really good, and we'll have those fans eventually. But I've only ever met United fans who say that. It's funny, that, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's funny. I've come across the same as well. It's generally, I even people who are close to my family have done the United fans, but they're not United fans, but they're United fans, and they're of a certain age where I can see why. What about you, Amos? To me, I was absolutely buzzing. It felt great, that release, and I think the frustrated. I'm even not nervous. I still have that the edge is still there for me.
I mean, I'm nervous going into the game at home against Bournemouth half the time. Oh my God, Philip Billing's going to score twice and Solanke's going to score. We're going to lose 3-0. So you can imagine what I'm like.
Philip Billing. That is where we've come to.
He was my obscure fantasy pick at the start of the season, and it's taken him 10 games to score a goal. He obviously scored against Burnley. He lobbed James Trafford, and I was doing knee slides around there because I was telling everyone at the start of the season, Philip Billing, amazing midfielder. He's going to get loads of goals. He scored 8 last season. He's great, blah blah. Anyway, so Philip Billing, big up. But I still have them nerves. I still have those feelings. However, I felt like it was a little bit tempered after the FA Cup final, because I don't think it's ever going to be. That was a mess. I was a mess that day, and I don't think it's ever going to get to that sort of fever pitch again. So yesterday was still a bit sort of edgy, a little bit nervy. Team news dropped, and people saying, "Oh, we're going to smash them, we're going to smash them, we're going to smash them." I'm like, that if there's ever a United team to beat City in a fluky game, it is Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire at the back. Thankfully, it went the opposite way, and City did get the win. But it's the worst day up until you win 3-0 or however many scorelines. Then it's the best day.
Comment already from Charlie saying, "Can we see a Mulv griddy again?" I mean, the Derby victory. Give the people what they want. No,
Nobody wants that.
Maybe
we all want it. We all want it.
We all want it. We all want it. I know, but yeah, I feel the same, man. Like, it's weird. It's hard not to, isn't it? Look at the United side, and it's weird. Like, the naff of the United side are the higher my anxiety levels, which doesn't make any sense. But that's the rule of football, isn't it? Like, if it's a really good United side, like, conversely, you trust the City side to get it done because they'll be focused. But if it's a jammy kind of naff one, you're like, oh, they're going to do something weird. Like, Fernandes is going to score a goal, which shouldn't be a goal, which is genuinely an accepted thing, and Lindelof will have a storm at left back somehow. Something silly, but to be honest, what we saw was an incredibly professional performance. It felt good. Like, that City side, the first half hour, we were all right. We did pretty well going through the motions, but I think the second half in particular, to me, this is the title of the video. It was that the best performance of the season. I feel like it could have been so far. I mean, obviously, it's early on, but do you share that potential view, Amos? Because you look at the performances, maybe Leipzig, maybe Brighton, Newcastle. Where does this rank?
I'd probably put it in the category of most dominant. Like you say, bar the first 25 minutes, I think Foden set up Højlund it was a wonderful pass. He was trying to assist the wrong Scandinavian blonde-haired striker. And then obviously Grealish, Grealish gave the ball away in a similar sort of fashion. But after that, I'd say man-to-man, all 11 players, and I include all 11 because I thought Ederson was just as crucial to that domination, playing out from the back, some of the passes he was playing. It was sensational at times. So yeah, I'd say the most dominant. I guess the caveat is, United are United, Derby Day's a Derby Day. But if we strip it back, that United team's woeful. It really is truly horrendous. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks when I think there's a game against Chelsea, there's a game against Liverpool coming up, Spurs going into into December as well. It'll be interesting to see how we evolve, but it was a confidence booster at the right time. And best performance of the season? Yeah, sure, let's go for it. I think it was in that situation, in that environment, to do that is always special.
Mulv?
Yeah, agree with that. I mean, I counted it last night. I watched it back again, and I think within the first 12 minutes, we set them away on counterattacks about 4 times, and they couldn't score. So for me, it's a combination.
It's not about making it hard for yourself, isn't it? Like, I asked my landlord to increase my rent for the hustle, or whatever. It's that kind of thing, and it's like, we'll give them a few chances, get their XG up a little bit, and then see what happens from there.
So while that does point to us being a bit sloppy at the start of the match, at least, is it possible that we were very good and they were very bad? Is that all right?
I think that's possible, yeah.
Because
you beat what's in front of you, can't you?
Because they didn't take the chances we gave them. They didn't take the very few chances they made themselves. And I think we'll get into some of the player performances later, and largely across the team, we were amazing. So, I think it's a bit of both. Is it the best performance of the season? Probably. I think we missed Stones more than we thought we did.
Yeah.
There's something about putting him and Rodri in a midfield that is a bit unfair. And the thing that they bring that I think is underrated is just their courage with the ball and to make difficult passes to pass through the midfield of another team. And when you've got both of them in there playing the way they are, we're almost impossible to beat.
It's a good point though about the courage, actually, because it's not all about ability always, is it? Like, a lot of great teams have a lot of bravery, don't they, as well? Like, they do. They have to have the players who are willing to take that pass, willing to Stones and Rodri in particular was stepping past defenders or playing that through ball. And Rodri's obviously the decision to go for it led to the third goal, didn't it? Where he thought, you know what, I'm just going to go past someone, take the shot on. And it's so easy just to be tempted to keep the ball in the Guardiola team, and you blend in and you'll do fine, and you'll get a decent sofa score rating, and everyone's like, oh, they had a good game. But if you want that 8.5, like on sofa, you going to have to do something a little bit stronger, and that's what the best players do. And I think that's what it seems like a good balance, doesn't it, Amos, this side? Because you've got, there's a bit of flair there, there's a bit of creativity, but at the same time, the defensive facilities, other than self-inflicted mistakes, which just happens every now and then. To me, I was looking outside and thought, have we potentially seen a blueprint for the season?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because with that part of the campaign where I think you're never going to see the same starting 11 play consecutive matches, just because Champions League, the opponents not as strong. Obviously coming up in a couple of weeks as young boys at home, that's going to be a completely different starting 11. And I even think going ahead to Bournemouth, you're looking at different types of players for that. But I reckon come sort of February, March, April, May, this is probably the starting 11 we'll see a lot more. Kevin De Bruyne is obviously the elephant in the room there. When he comes back, where does he get in? Because I've seen people suggesting that on current form, do you drop Alvarez? Well, no, because he's been so crucial to City this season. But on the other hand, it's Kevin De Bruyne. He plays wherever he wants. So there's a conundrum coming up. But I think it's reassuring after a couple of weeks of iffy performances. Obviously, Rodri was the big miss, and I still think there is that sort of shadow. If he goes down with an injury, then suddenly things are going to be very ominous. As good as John Stones is, I think Rodri is the linchpin there. But especially that front five: Grealish, Silva, Alvarez, Foden, Haaland. I think it's the most fluid we've seen. Possibly even going sort of into last season as well. When we were winning games in the treble campaign, I don't remember it being as fluid as that. Think about the second Haaland goal, the second City goal. It involves 8 players. It starts at Edison. Beautiful. It involves 8 players. Bernardo and Grealish down that left-hand side was tormenting the United defence all day. That little overlap, dink to the back post and cultured header. I mean, how often do you see a player chip a goalkeeper with a header? And you go back into the first half as well, he just had one save. So mentality monster maybe, Erling Haaland. But yeah, I think it was probably the most fluid attack we've seen.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I do think we're going to see very different teams depending on the game, absolutely. And that sort of touched on a point I want to talk about Grealish, because obviously Jack Grealish, necessarily, in my opinion, divisive. Like there's no need for it. But obviously Jeremy Doku's general emergence has ignited that debate. And once again, a debate I don't think it needs to happen. But the conclusion I came to in my head last night, and it's not exactly a groundbreaking one, but I was thinking, if we're playing Bournemouth at home, I want Jeremy Doku. If we're playing Man United away, I want Jack Grealish. And it's weird. It's almost like the bigger the game, I want Jack Grealish. And it sounds counterintuitive, but I feel like at home, we dominate the ball, just give it to Doku, let him do his thing. But then if you're going to dominate the ball, but it's a different kind of domination when you've got it just feels like it's set up that way, that's still plenty of football for both. But where do you stand on this this issue, or is it even an issue, Mulv? The Doku and Grealish thing.
It's not really an issue, is it? So I was one calling for Doku in the derby because I really didn't rate United going into it. I just thought he was a bit more added chaos that United wouldn't be able to handle.
You were right to fair the last 10 minutes.
and who knows what it would have been like if he'd have started. Maybe it'd have been even more, I don't know, convincing win. Who knows? But I love both of those players. I have said on occasion that I disagree that when people say that they're very different. I don't think they're particularly different. I think Doku can largely do, outside of the experience part of it, most of what Grealish does, and adds a little bit of pace as well. But what I was most impressed with Grealish yesterday, maybe this is the piece that Doku was missing, was defensively he was outstanding.
Yeah,
just outstanding. And I think that goes unnoticed and untalked about. So I love both of those guys. I was so happy for Jack to put in a really stellar performance yesterday, and for Doku to come on and have a bit of cheeky cameo and ruffle a few feathers.
How satisfying was that, by the way? Oh, that's their captain, Bruno Fernandes. That was their captain, Amos, mate. Like, look at how tragic it was at the end there. Like, just kicking the invisible man, mate. And then the Anthony stuff.
I mean, nothing will ever sour the victory, but I did go away from that game thinking, like, what on earth did they have to do to get sent off? And maybe the referee was thinking, it's 5 minutes from time, I don't want to be sending a player off. But Anthony commits arguably 2 red card offences, certainly 2 yellow card offences in the space of 5 seconds. And that is not an exaggeration. He sort of goes in on Doku's ankles, and then the one we've all seen, he swipes out at him 5 seconds later.
His reaction's another yellow card if you wanted to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And he's slapping his hand away as well. It's pure. It's embarrassment. It's utter embarrassment. Not only were they schooled on the pitch, they brought their stellar signing of the Ten Hag era off the bench to come and try and add a little bit of fight, add a bit of hunger. And he has 4 minutes. I think he commits 2 fouls. He gets dribbled past twice, all by Jeremy Doku, by the way. Purely embarrassed. And then obviously Fernandes, probably the most hateable player in the Premier League. I think I'm right in saying. I've seen United fans say the same as well. It's madness.
Really? So United fans are hating on Bruno?
I can't stand him. I mean, the thing is, he's such an exceptional talent. And I think before the game, when we were doing the combined 11s, and I think most people would say 11 City players get in it. But I was saying, on talent, Bruno Fernandes is a wonderful footballer, but he's just such a detestable person when he's on the pitch. And your captain, when it's not going well, you don't want to see them sort of flapping about on the floor. You don't want to see them running up to the referee. You want to see him try and sort of regain a little bit of humility. And it was just the complete opposite. It was utter embarrassment.
And it was wonderful to see. It really was
magical. It was magical.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, there's something about a derby victory that's followed by total head loss. It's so much more satisfying. Like, it feels like so often, even if it's just us passing it around at in the corner flag for a little bit, it feels that we're very blessed. We've seen so many times now where the City players are just genuinely just baiting United players, and it happens all the time, and they're drawn into it every single time. The lessons are never learned. It's a lot of the similar players as well, and it just makes it way more satisfying. Like, we are essentially just toying them. It's a cat of a mouse, isn't it? Playing with the victim at the end, and I absolutely love it. How bad are this United side, by the way? Genuinely, like, what is everyone's assessment of them? Because I was looking at the players and thinking, how many of them are actually genuinely Champions League footballers? And it's handful. It really is. At most, Fernandes has the talent. I agree with that. Rashford on the day has the talent. Højlund, well, we don't know yet. We don't know if he does. It's not a good team, is it, Mulv?
No, and they're not helped by the manager either. Like, clearly, Pep Guardiola he takes a team of players that are at one level, and when they all play together, they go to another level. And Ten Hag's not getting that out of those players. In fact, they're less than the sum of their parts, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wonder if the answer to just in the transfer market is just being able to pick out the petulant Portuguese from the perfect Portuguese. Where I don't know.
They should sign Cancelo. That would be really fun.
He would fit. He would fit. I do worry about Núñez a little bit. It looks like he might have a bit of that in him, but hopefully Bernardo because Bernardo and Ruben are the other, they're the perfect Portuguese, aren't they? So
there's 2 types of Portuguese, basically. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to use as many P's in one sentence as I could.
Perfect petulant Portuguese. Petulant Portuguese pricks is what we were trying to say about them lot. No, it says a lot about their character as well. And the thing is, you look at like one of the best players, Casemiro. He doesn't change that either. He doesn't. Casemiro hasn't got. He's a head loss kind of guy as well. Like we saw it in the FA Cup final when he was kicking out. And like he's got that to him. And then Varane, he's probably past it a little bit now. And you go around that team like.
I mean, they were using McTominay as like a 10. What's going on?
Well, exactly. Weird. I mean, that's it in the nutshell, really, isn't it? McTominay at 10.
Well, I almost think what's happened to them in the last couple of weeks played into our hands quite a bit, because I think they were running on a bit of confidence. The McTominay late win a couple of weekends ago, and then Harry Maguire found some form. just in time, you know. For
Just those two names.
The bar's low, isn't it?
It really is.
McTominay last minute win, a Harry Maguire header,
It's a
a last minute penalty save.
Well,
I mean, if that's your confidence, then
false confidence, wasn't it? I mean, but perfect timing for us.
I can't really put into words how naff they are. They really are that bad right now. I tweeted like I think this side's really generally just a mid-table side, and is a United fan that I know who works quite prominently in the football industry. He just DM'd me saying we're worse than that, and he's someone I would trust. He's like he works for a major football agency, and he was like he's been watching United for years. He's like no, we're worse, and he genuinely thinks they are struggle to get top 10 if they carry on this way, because they think the players obviously they've got some to come back from injury. But I started to think, but is Anthony anything more then? Like, would he do? Does he even start for West Ham? You know what I mean? Like, Ben Rama's probably a better player. I'm not even exaggerating there. Like, these players like Bowen and Ben Rama, and then you go around for all the teams, and like, you know, I'd rather have Brennan Johnson, who's just gone to obviously Spurs, but he was at Forest. You know, like you think actually these aren't that good. I think they just spent a lot of money on them. You know, I think they are actually only lower Premier League players. Yeah. You know, maybe Conference League players or whatever. You know, and these are the ones that they've spent the money on. So long may it continue anyway, because they were absolutely awful.
Bit of a graveyard, isn't it?
Did you see all the Neville stuff about the Carragher and Neville just arguing over? They're sort of both right, but you know, it's the Glazers, and the penny's never gonna drop, is it, for them? I don't know. Either way, who particularly stood out for you then yesterday, Amos? Because obviously, you know, was it more of a team performance? Anyone stood out for you individually, or?
Yeah, just finally on Anthony, I'm not sure he starts for FC United, let alone Manchester United or West Ham United or anyone like that. I think I've seen someone dub him the £100 million fidget spinner, something along them lines, which is a sort of an indictment on him. But as for City, I mean, it was just a glorious performance, and again, I go back to that first 20 minutes. I think things were a little bit shaky. I remember I was actually saying to my dad at the time, this could be an early bath for Gvardiol. He gave the ball away a couple of times. He looked really shaky. Yeah. And there was a few maybe nerves. Obviously, going to Old Trafford, regardless of the state United are in, is always going to be a big game. But after that, City just really settled into it. And at half-time, I was thinking 1-0 is probably the worst scoreline for City here, because they could have been 2-3, 4-0 up, and the game could have been done and dusted. And I was expecting a rejuvenated United in that second half, but it was death, as we've seen at Old Trafford before, death by 1,000 passes in that second half. However, this time, I compare it to the 21-22 game at Old Trafford. We won 2-0 there. We had the goals to go alongside that performance this time around, and obviously Haaland brings you that. I think if I'm going to pick sort of standouts, Rodri's always going to be good. I agree with Mulv. John Stones coming back into the team is imperative to get the best out of Rodri as well. Grealish, Bernardo, for me, I go back to it. I think they were the standouts. However, shout out for Kyle Walker. He continues to have a wonderful season. I was one of those people in the summer who were like, if Kyle Walker leaves, is it the worst thing? Obviously, 33 years old now or whatever. He's just won the Champions League. We can maybe refresh that position. How wrong I was. He's turning back the years. He's probably playing, for my money anyway, his best football in 3 or 4 years. And he's got that position on a lock. And we're back to that situation now where if Kyle Walker goes down injured, suddenly things start to look a little bit different, a little bit more tricky for City. But I'd say I don't know if any City player was below an 8 out of 10. And that's what you want in a derby game away from home.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And Josko Gvardiol, talk to me a little bit about him, because he did start a little bit slowly. I can't deny it. Like, he was trying to give them a little bit of an advantage. I don't know what he was doing, but either way, I watched back a comp on Twitter because you see him going around, and it's easy to get lost in the sort of noise of the derby day for a defender. You know, you don't too many brilliant attackers doing brilliant attacking things, and then I watched it back. I was like, oh my god, I forgot how good he was on the day. Like, constantly stepping into midfield, past people, and I feel sorry for Nathan Ake, because I love Nathan Ake, but he's unquestionably a better footballer, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in terms of technical ability and so on. And he was made for Pep, wasn't he?
Yeah, I'm starting to think he's the real robot. Like, he's more of a robot than Erling Haaland for me. Like, literally
more than one robot. You know what I mean?
Cyberman
made in a lab, like for Pep. On our podcast, like the last 2 weeks prior to this one, I was giving him Man of the Match awards, and listening to other shows, they weren't really talking about him that much. And then right when I got behind him and gave him praise, he started the derby off
You're trying to say you invested in the stocks
Awful.
early? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying. I think he's gone under the radar a bit this
Yeah.
season, and how quickly he's adapted, and
Mhm.
he's just so comfortable that he doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my take. But in terms of the performance, it was a total team performance, like total football. We just dragged them all over the pitch. The way Bernardo and Grealish were just interchanging on the wing or cutting inside, either way, incredible. Yeah, again, all goes back to the courage for me that Stones brings you along with Rodri, and that was the big thing that changed us last season. If you remember, coming out of the World Cup, I think we were debating, was Pep being was it too much control? Was he going for too much control and therefore no creativity? But Pep told us himself it was all about the players needing to be. He wanted his players to return. Remember that? Like be more courageous, play, and ultimately he was right. He always is. And with the introduction of Rico Lewis, and then John Stones nailed down that position, and that I think was completely back on show in the derby. They just played fearless football, total football, and just smashed them.
It's weird that you mentioned Rico Lewis that way, by the way, because it genuinely sounds, and it's not even unrealistic. It genuinely sounds like Rico Lewis was the turning point for Manchester City's greatest ever side, and like that's a crazy thing to say out loud, but
that's
it
real.
might actually be true. If Rico Lewis came into the team to sort of basically better than anyone initially play this style that Guardiola wanted to, this new formation, he got there ahead of everyone else in terms of how it was meant to do. And he gave City, the other players like Stones or whatever else, the courage to actually do it and show how it worked at 17. Like it's one of those little kind of footnotes in history where you go back, but that's the crux of it, right, Amos? Like Rico Lewis had that impact.
It's low-key facts, for real.
Yeah, it's like the prodigal son sent from the Burt God above. He just drops into the
Burt God above.
I know, yeah. I'm trying to picture what it would look like, but
the Burt God. This is Curly Watts from Corrie in it, I don't know. Well, Pete the Badge,
Pete the Badge, yeah, a big up Pete the Badge. But yeah, he was just sort of dropped in there sort of around November time. Obviously, before the World Cup, he had a few cameos, but playing right back, and then it was after the World Cup where things just didn't look right for City. And I remember John Stones playing as a natural right back multiple occasions, and I'm thinking, what is Guardiola doing? He's going to waste one of England's greatest ever centre backs career, trying to be something he's not. Suddenly, obviously, things click into gear, and I think that sort of. We obviously speak about the derby, and it's as is always the case, goes into a conversation about how good Pep Guardiola is. But I don't know if it's been picked up on enough. Just the tiny tweaks the manager is able to make, which bring about so much success. A weird analogy, I guess, but I used to follow track cycling, when I was a sort of bit younger and still do. But Dave Brailsford, who was part of the Team GB setup, spoke about, and ironically could be ending up going to United as part of the Ineos takeover. He speaks about the 1% gains, the marginal gains, which can transform success. And it is something like turning John Stones into a sort of hybrid defender midfielder, so you get an extra overload in midfield that allows the wingers to all those little intricate pieces that we can't even compute, even in our wildest dreams, leads to City winning 3 trophies at the end of the season. And again, it'll be interesting this season because I always find the team that starts the season never looks the same in May. So maybe we look back on, to bring it back to this game, maybe we look back on a Manchester Derby 3-0 win where we go, oh yeah, that was that. That was when we started to see, the Kyle Walker doing his role, Phil Foden coming inside a little bit. Maybe it is today. And it's wonderful to watch, and long may it continue.
On that note there, have we just seen that? Because it is always around this time of year, isn't it? November, December, whatever, where you start to see the seeds of the future, what Man City's season's going to be. Because it is around this time. Like, we have a slowish start, a little bit earlier than usual, potentially. But, it feels like Pep's been flirting with this formation now for a few games now. And given the certain players that come back, and I think even if we don't want to admit, like, there could be a chance Alvarez gets on the bench and De Bruyne comes back, that is the obvious option for where De Bruyne comes into the team, and the system suits our potential best player returning. So is this potential? Can you see any further changes to the system other than what we've got right now, Mulv? Because it just makes sense, doesn't it? What we've got right now.
The only thing I saw was Grealish inside was cooking.
Yeah, I like it.
I mean, that's the only thing I can see. I mean, you could still you could still have Bernardo on the right wing in a big game if you needed to. Talking Champions League type stuff or Arsenal perhaps. But I can't see it changing too much. And I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit shocking. As big as Ake and Akanji were in the run-in last season, neither of them were in this game yesterday. And we were still really good at the back. So boy, oh boy. No, I can't see much except I can see maybe Grealish. That thing that they had going, Grealish and Bernardo yesterday, was something that I don't think we've really utilized enough before. And if that's a new thing, that's brilliant, because you saw the I think twice Bernardo, because it puts Bernardo on his left foot, right? And the way Bernardo
twice, I think he's got into that position a few times. You know, that overlapping thing. Did it all the time.
I'm a bit used to Bernardo being on the right wing or being sort of in the midfield when we need him, just sort of, you know, bringing the ball out from the back in the build-up. I've never really seen him doing what he did yesterday. And I think the final product from him, because he's on his left foot, you know, natural-sided left footer, that dink to Haaland is on.
It's pure David Silva. David Silva, in my opinion, is probably the best ever in that sort of inside... Yeah. Like just inside the left-hand side of the area. He was always there, linking up with, like, I don't know, just be a winger like Sane or whatever. David Silva was just so good at that, finding that little bit of space just inside that kind of pocket of the area. And to be honest, it's sort of like we've seen signs of Jack Grealish reveling in that before, when just in like early cup games where Gomez went outside him and whatever, and it helped his game really obviously. I think there's one against Chelsea last year, potentially, I think, in the cup, where Grealish had a really good game because, you know, Gomez was offering the overlap. And to me, it's really obvious that Grealish absolutely just thrives with players around him. The amount of times Grealish gets the ball, like, one-on-one, and he's not Doku that way. Like, he's not going to take his man on one. He can do it, but nowhere near as efficiently as Jeremy Doku can. But he's great, Grealish, if you give him options, you know, and because he has the intelligence to pick out that pass. And I'm amazed we haven't seen it a bit sooner, because it feels really obvious to me to have someone go around Grealish and then let him come in on the right foot. Because, like, the problem is yesterday, Grealish's shots, even though they weren't good, they weren't getting blocked. And usually they're always blocked because it's so obvious what he's going to do. Because no one's overlapping him. He's going to cut in and shoot. But now the defenders are just a half a yard, a little bit more hesitant because they're expecting the overlap. So he gets his shot off or he gets his pass off. Yeah. Is it that straightforward, Amos? I feel like I've been missing. Like we've not done it for such a long time.
I reckon it was more of a case of Grealish being the fall guy to accommodate other players in the system. And you know, people criticise Jack Grealish because he's so controlled, he's so well mannered, but occasionally the opportunity will come to take a defender on and he doesn't do it. But he's never been that sort of player. You know, I saw a compilation going around of his time at Villa, and it was all sort of, most of it was counter-attacking, sort of blistering, sort of 3-on-2s, etc. and stuff like that, mainly because of the team Villa were at the time. But he's never been a sort of 5 take-ons per match player. Most of the time he never played on the wing for starters, so that was sort of another transition he had to make. But he's always been, for City anyway, he's always been that guy who just keeps things ticking over, and you need that. I mean, we don't win the treble without Jack Grealish, and it is amazing just sort of how maybe short term some people's memories are, because obviously this season he's been injured and he's struggled at times, and Doku's come in, he's been wonderful. And I kind of disagree with what you said, Mulv, in the sense that you think they're sort of similar. I sort of see him as antithesis. I see him, Doku, coming in because he does stuff Grealish can't, and I don't know if Doku has the same composure in a game at Old Trafford to sort of pick those intricate passes. But maybe without Kevin De Bruyne, the onus does fall on Jack Grealish a little bit more to have that creative freedom, and he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy hugging the touchline and passing the ball inside. He can drift a little bit, and he can have that little bit more freedom because there's the spaces to do so. And yeah, he's. I love him. I have loved him for sort of the majority of his City career. Obviously, it was a struggle at the start, but we really started to see that click into gear after the World Cup, and it just continues to sort of blossom.
It shouldn't matter that much because ultimately, you know, what the pitch matters loads. But I really think people sort of underestimate how much Jack Grealish clearly loves being here as well sometimes. And to me, that does matter. It does. Like, there's a photo of him yesterday. There's an absolutely visceral celebration, you know.
He gets it, doesn't he?
Yeah, it means a lot. And I think, I mean, that comes, I think, from Grealish's humility. I mean, he was obviously absolutely pissed. But all the quotes last season when we won the treble and he was there, like, I just love this. He's like, I love this club. I love it here. I love that. I genuinely love to hear that because I get the impression that Grealish is he's quite a sharer. He's quite an open person. You've seen all the interviews, and he comes across as very sincere. He speaks from the heart. Very obviously speaks from the heart. He's clearly a bit of a family person as well, based off everything we've seen about him. He's open, warm, and charismatic. And I think he's very appreciative of where he is and very appreciative of what he's been given, in terms of this opportunity at City. And to me, that matters. It does. And it goes back to the comparison to the way, Fernandes and Antony act towards that. And I know Grealish gets into a little bickering every now and then, but I don't ever see Grealish as petulant or as a whiner or a moaner. And I don't see that to him. I see him as an eminently likable person. And that actually does matter. And I think sometimes the fans who get on his back a little bit are ours. They don't realise how much of even if they deem a problem, they don't realise how much of a lovely problem he is. In terms of that matters. Yeah. If he's your biggest problem in your squad, you're flying, because Jack Grealish is a wonderful footballer. You might not be one that you like, but he's absolutely zero problem at all. He's incredibly popular. He's got his own skill set. And I guess some people, what I'm trying to say is take it for granted how happy he is to be here and how much he helps everyone else in that team. And I mean, it's just such an underspoken about part of his personality that I think he's up for it. He loves it. And I think that it does matter because he's got the exact right mentality for this team. Super chat from AFC Max, which is of course an Arsenal fan. It says, "Hey guys, Arsenal fan here. Just wanted to say, watch back the game 3 times. Impressive dedication, mate. I haven't done that. To make a fair review, I think Man City didn't get out of second gear because they didn't need to. Also, that penalty was awful. Controversial last sentence there, but I think going on the second gear thing, yeah, I probably think that was. I think we went up a little bit at one point, but I don't think we got out of third gear at very much. I don't think City were at the scintillating best, but I don't think we needed to be. And do you need to exert more energy than you have to? I think. Did we get out of second gear, guys? Do you believe that? Was it a stroll or was it?
I don't think we have the same number of gears we used to. I think honestly 5, though, but I think some people underestimate how. I think that means they don't think we're as good. But I think it's the opposite. Yeah. It's like we've just really doubled down on control and just being harder to beat. So. Like the Centurion season, for example, that there was a gear there that I don't think any team in English football has ever managed to get to. But I don't think we're trying to get to that gear again. I think there's a lower gear that we stay in that just sort of like a tank almost.
Just
whatever gear, tank gear. We're in tank gear.
We're in tank gear. Like when you get a tank in GTA and you sort of just stroll around the streets, rolling over on the police car. And they can't get it to you because you're in a tank.
Yeah. I think it's a decent comparison because you mentioned the Centurions and 18, 19 season as well, and obviously 16, 17, Pep's first season, kind of an anomaly. But there was still a drop off there. When the 17, 18 teams, the 18, 19 teams were great. They were wonderful. I personally have 18, 19 as probably Pep's best City team, just in terms of visuals to watch. But they still had a drop off. I remember game against Leicester, it was woeful just around Christmas time. A couple defeats in there as well. But with this City team, I reckon the gap between the gears is much shorter. And I guess people underestimate just how good City are in, let's say, first gear. And for anyone who drives an automatic, this is going to be awfully confusing going throughout the gears. Yeah. But, City's first gear is probably good enough to finish inside the top 4. City on a bad day could probably finish inside the top 4. Yeah.
I think if we ever get to 5th gear, it's that first half of the Real Madrid game.
Yes,
and that's that was. But we don't need that. As you're saying, we just
and
don't.
You can only do that on a certain number of occasions. Everyone needs to be tuned in, and it needs to be a game like a Champions League semi-final to go through. That gets you.
The way I feel about it is that I think Pep's assembled a bunch of players who just don't really have anything less than a bunch of 7 out of 10 performances. And I think that. I mean, I know that sounds really obvious, but he's assembled a collection of players who are just super reliable and consistent, and if you've got talent and you're very consistent, you don't have to be the very best of your game to win regularly. And occasionally you get I'd be like L'Equipe in terms of my 10 out of 10 ratings are very rare. I just don't think because I think 10 out of 10 is basically when everyone is pushing 10 out of 10, and that happens in football so infrequently. It doesn't. That leads to the Real Madrid game, for example. That is just a rare performance of sheer brutality when everyone's on it. They're very creative and functional and determined and focused best. But most games, even your best games, you're probably getting 110, a few 9s, and rest 7 8s, and that's enough to win 3 or 4-0 if you've got the quality of Man City. But I do agree that this City side, That was yesterday. It was just a standard City performance because the City was so good and they're so controlled, so organised. It was better than United.
You can't argue that we haven't traded creativity for efficiency, both at the front and back, right? Like the false nine, you had to be super creative because we didn't have really efficient clinical strikers. At the back, therefore, we needed more creative, say, fullbacks like a Cancelo or Zinchenko maybe even. But now it's like, largely centre backs across the back four. One of them slips into midfield, but just like Haaland and Alvarez are just so efficient that you don't have to the gears that we talked about. You don't have to get into a super high gear to win.
We don't need to blow teams away, do we? We don't need to win 6-0. I think if City wanted to yesterday at Old Trafford, they could have left there with a 7-0 scoreline comfortably, having had 40 shots on target or whatever it might be. But it's just not necessarily. You're not going to overexert yourself because that's when you open yourself up to the counter-attacks that concede your goals.
I also, to sort of go and be tried against that, I also don't really think the City side has that. I think they come out and play exactly the way they're going to play regardless. Occasionally they'll get the adrenaline boost from a bad decision or whatever. But I think the City side is, as Mulv was saying, they are just sort of the way they play is the way they play. It either works or it doesn't. But I don't think it's intensity or less intensity. It's just pretty much that's it. And that's it. And sometimes the chances like that, the XG was like 4.5 for City. And that could have been 5-0 yesterday. We're just taking our chances. I think the only difference between it looking more intense and less intense is probably just the finishing, and that's ultimately what's made it look like we stayed in second gear. When I think if we scored 5, which we could have, everyone would be like, "Oh, City got the blister and best," and we just because we took 2 less chances, it looks like we just strolled it. In terms of the penalty, AFC Max mentioned that. Look, the penalty is an interesting one because it's one of those sort of like. Blind spots in football. I think that penalty, in terms of there's that argument about you'd have 10 a week if you give them, but then it's sort of true. But I also would argue that this was actually not that uncommon a penalty. We've seen these ones given plenty of times. Where a player's clearly pulled back and impeded is more the word I would use, as opposed to. I think the biggest issue for me about Rodri was not that his arms around him; it was that he stopped him from going somewhere. Which is, I think that's what made the referee look at it because he was mid-run and his run was halted, as opposed to they just stood next to each other. And if he just jumped in the spot and he was holding him around his waist, he probably would have got away with it. But I think it was more blatant than the internet let on. But what did you feel about the penalty, Amos? Was it soft or was it fair?
I think, let's be honest, it was probably on the softer side. I don't put it in the category of stone wall in the sense that you look at it straight away, yes, that's a penalty. I think it did take a couple of replays and interesting that we saw the lesser scene stopping the game midway through to go and have a look at the monitor as opposed to sort of, yes, that's a penalty, check it, whatever. I'm in camp penalty, and the argument, we'd have 10 a week. I'm like, okay, well, give 10 a week. If the fouls, the fouls. You know what I mean? Like, the only way you stop people doing that is by punishing it. And then I think for far too long, we've had defenders get away with doing that sort of thing in the box, holding, grappling, whatever it may be.
It's a weird,
and I just think, like, punish it. The way I looked at it and the way I boiled it down, I did not want to see a foul like that. And I'll use it the same if it was City, if it was United, if it was Liverpool, whoever. You don't want to see fouls like that go unpunished. And I think that's sort of the most basic way of looking at it.
Mulv?
Totally, I can't add to that. I totally agree with it.
Yeah.
It was a foul, it was in the box, it's a penalty. And they should call those more often, in my opinion.
It's really as simple as this for me. 5 yards the other direction, everyone wants a free kick for that outside the area. Everyone does. It's like no one argues about that. Literally, no one argues. How often do we see counter-attacks and someone just pulls the shirt and stops them running away, and then you get basically a free kick, and no one ever argues about it. Someone gets a yellow card pulling them back, and that's basically it. And that's where we're at. Another super chat, which I don't actually understand because I feel like you're referring to someone else here. Hey, Stephen, did you still stand by a sleeper statement with Cecil? Who's Cecil? I have no idea what you're about, mate. After Haaland had 0.0 XG with Diaz and you with the Stones argument. Love your content, by the way, fellas. Good luck to girls. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate that. But I genuinely have no idea what you're referring to. I'm so sorry, man. You don't have to do another super chat, but I appreciate that. But I honestly don't know what my sleeper statement was because I don't feel like I released one. That's my United release statements, not me. But if I said something about Saliba, negative. I don't remember that because obviously he was a cracking player. But I think Ruben Diaz is the best centre back in the world. And either way, thank you very much for the super chat. It's really appreciated. And I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're referring to, mate. But you're much appreciated. And I do like it, by the way, when you get fans of other teams watching other channels. I think it's well, you're only here because you love the sport, basically, which I appreciate. And thank you so much, Max, for that. And good luck to the guy. You don't mean good luck, really, do you? You've been too nice now. I hope you have a terrible season, my friend. No, much love, Max. Yeah, seriously. But I don't know what you're on about there, but we'll see. How are you guys feeling about everyone else, by the way, in the league? Because obviously, last time I spoke to you was probably a month or two ago. And the pictures started to become a little bit clearer, I would say. How are you feeling about the rivals so far this season, Mulv?
Well, there's one team I'm not too worried about anymore. If I ever was,
they are so bad.
I think it's shaping up nicely. We're 2 points off the top. What are we, a third of the way through? Is it?
Quarter, maybe. Is 11 games, 10, 11 games? I didn't do maths at A level, so someone else can work that out.
Somewhere in there.
Someone would see the third and a quarter, which is, I don't know what that fraction is.
10 games gone. 10 games gone.
10 games gone. Well, 10 games gone. That's a good one. We're into November.
I would anticipate, from a City perspective, that we'll keep improving. I mean, it's Pep Guardiola we're talking about here. I think the weakness would be another Rodri suspension or injury. But outside of that, I think we'll definitely be in the mix towards the end. As far as the rest, some very good teams out there still. Arsenal, Liverpool, and Spurs come to mind immediately. Although I still feel like we're better, and we might distance ourselves from those teams between now and May. So
I hope so. Amos, what do you reckon, Spurs? Have they got the staying power? Because by the way, I would say there'd be nothing funnier, genuinely, and I'd hate it, but it's still funnier. If Spurs won the league and Kane left, it would be objectively hilarious, right? We'd all agree with that,
Yes.
It'd be an outcome that I think most people would just end up laughing. I think just call the sport off at that point. What's the point in continuing? Spurs are interesting. It's funny, actually. Tottenham are doing what Arsenal did last year. And obviously, a lot of people at this time last year were saying, Arsenal won't be able to keep it up. Arsenal are going to drop off. Arsenal are going to be this and that. And well, I guess in the end, they probably did. But I think Spurs look strong. I said it with Arsenal last year. You can only judge them on what they're putting forward. There's no point in saying, oh no, Tottenham aren't going to be able to keep this up. Well, if the top of the table, whether it's 10 games in, 1 game in, 30 games in, judge them where they're at that point in the campaign. I like Spurs. I like Arsenal. I don't think they've got enough to win the league. I actually think Liverpool will be City's closest competitors. I think they're purring. And I think more importantly for a title challenge isn't to race out the blocks dead early, because even City have done it. I mean, 21-22 was it against Liverpool? We were like 8 points clear, 9 points clear, and they dragged it back. It is such a slog. It is such a marathon. I think City and Liverpool are just sort of going through the motions a little bit. And what is it, 25th of November, the game between us two? That'll be an interesting one.
I think already. Is that Anfield or,
no, it's City. It's at City first. Okay. So I think that's probably our next waypoint, if you like, our next checkpoint to sort of go, right, okay, judge us after that. But I think the top 4 at the moment is probably how it will finish. Not in that order though.
Yeah, I'm looking at the fixtures now. Bournemouth next weekend. Got a rare week off actually. Then obviously young boys in the Champions League, a chance to put that group to bed, which we will do, I'm sure. Chelsea away, which is an interesting game, and then actually a week off again as well. 2 weeks actually. Already another international
break. Last one though. Last one of the year.
Last one of the year. It's like the opposite of bank holidays, aren't they? Like you come around and you don't expect them, and then you do want them or you don't want them. Then of course, then Liverpool. At least we got a little bit of a break there. Who knows? Well, Stones will get injured for England. Let's be honest. Bloody hell, it always happens. That's a good point. Max, by the way, he confused me with City. Hugh from City Extra. He looks like your apologies. all us bearded guys, white guys with beards. We all look the same, don't we? everyday, stereotyping. Sorry, mate. My bad. What did he say, by the way? Was he negative against Saliba? You won't get that on this channel, unless it's United play. Then I'll tell them they're terrible. Because it's facts, mate. Guys, let's. Anything you want to add more before we leave it about the derby?
No, just buzzing off it. Slapped him again. Yeah, probably start to come down a bit now. Because looking back, they're shocking, aren't they?
Yeah.
Although I will have to get myself G'd up again later because the noisy pod will be recording tonight, so we'll be doing our victory lap here in a bit. So look out for that in the morning.
Absolutely, Joey will be excited. I'm sure he will be, as always. And yeah, likewise. Are we actually should we celebrate beating United as much as we do, Amos? Should it be actually?
Always. We should be having open top bus parades just for beating United. I mean, the pain, the torment, the torture, the embarrassment. I mean, I always think that. I'm always like, oh, I kind of feel bad for United. They're a basket case, and I'm like, no, switch into gear. No, I don't. I absolutely don't. Exactly. Yeah. Momentary thoughts. The thing is, like you said at the top, this isn't going to last forever. One day, the balance might shift again, be that in our lifetimes. Yeah, exactly. They're a financial juggernaut. They're going to get things in order eventually. So yeah, drink it in. 3-0 at Old Trafford is a par result, and I don't think anyone. We went to Manchester United. We went to Old Trafford as treble winners, won 3-0, and nobody was shocked. Imagine telling someone that 15 years ago.
2 boyhood City fans scoring as well.
Even better.
One literally whose dad played for the team, and some City kid. People still pretending, by the way, that Haaland isn't a City fan. I'm not saying he had a season ticket. You know what I mean? I'm not saying but it's obvious. What more can the man do to prove it?
It's mainly Leeds. It's mainly Leeds, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm sure. I'm sure he was a fan of literally whoever his dad played for. Yep. I mean, it's that simple, And that's totally normal and fine. But he's obviously got an affinity towards City, and enough to be excited to play for them. It's really obvious. If I had a dad who he was good at football and played for a certain team, even if it wasn't where I was born, I would be very excited to play for him. It's really obvious, isn't it?
He's literally in an old City shirt as a 2-year-old. It's not an AI generated image, is it?
That photo of him. One of my neighbours, he's a City fan, and we got chatting once. And he knocked on my door the other day and went, "Do you want this by any chance?" And it was literally that kit, the Haaland one, for the age of for that same age. Yes. And so my son's a little blonde boy, Ruben. So I cannot wait to recreate that photo. We've got that age, and they've got that whole kit. He just randomly gave me. It must have been his kid's kit. I was like, if you're watching, Joel, thank you very much. But why did you give us your kid's kit away? But we were like, yeah. So we're going to recreate that photo, and I cannot wait to redo that. Get little Ruben dressed as mini Erling Haaland, and that one day, 20 years from now, we'll see that on the internet when he's making his he won't be 20 when he does it. He'll make his debut at 17 like Rico Lewis, of course, like a true wonder kid, and it'll be wonderful. On that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, of course, to check out. Have you done a podcast yet on the City Report, Amos?
Yeah, I was dropped this morning. 40-minute review of the derby. We've got another one coming, obviously daily episodes. So City Report podcast, wherever you get your podcast from.
Go and give that a listen. And of course, obviously, the Noisy Boys will be recording tonight, so that'll be up tomorrow. Is that right, Mulv?
Correct.
As is Manchester City's dominance over Manchester United. It's exactly how it should be. Guys, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Go check out the 5 Things Learned video I did earlier. And go Burt somewhere. Burt hard. Burt forever. In a bit. Bye-bye. Have a lovely evening.